There's something eerie about a vanishing. Not a murder, not a car crash, but a person who simply disappears. 1 minute, they're alive, breathing, thinking, inventing. The next, their name is in the papers. Their face is on a missing persons list. Their body is nowhere to be found. And when the person who vanishes is someone important, someone brilliant, it makes you wonder. What did they know? What were they building? And who might have wanted them gone? These are not your average disappearances. These are 5 inventors, each on the verge of changing the world, who walked into the unknown and never came back. Number 5, Rudolf Diesel. Rudolf Diesel had always been a man of precision. In his world, things had to fit. The numbers, the pressure valves, the engines, everything had to run like clockwork. He was born in Paris, 1858, to German immigrants. His childhood was not gentle. His family was poor, and young Rudolf suffered a near-fatal illness that would scar his lungs for life. But he survived, and he learned to survive through obsession. Diesel wasn't flashy, he wasn't charming, but he had a mind that worked like one of his future machines, methodical, driven, unstoppable. While other engineers tinkered with steam, Diesel imagined something better, cleaner, more efficient. In 1897, after years of failures and near breakdowns, he unveiled it, the diesel engine. Not flashy, not fast, but strong. It was an engine that could run on peanut oil, that could outlast gas or steam, that could drive ships and trains and tanks for decades. And suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of him. But by 1913, Rudolf Diesel was not a man at peace. He was exhausted, broke, caught in a storm of debt, lawsuits, and politics. He was under pressure to sell his patent rights. The German military wanted control. The British had interest. Industrial titans circled like sharks. On September 29, 1913, Diesel boarded the SS Dresden, a steamer bound from Belgium to England. He had a leather briefcase with him. Inside it, blueprints, personal letters, and a diary. He ate dinner with the ship's officers, smiled, talked about business, said goodnight around 10 p.m., went to his cabin, laid out his nightshirt on the bed, took off his watch, folded it beside the wash basin, then locked the door behind him. He was never seen again. The next morning, the steward knocked. No answer. The cabin was exactly as he'd left it. Neat, organized, the bed untouched, the watch still ticking, but no Rudolf Diesel. A search of the ship turned up nothing. The ocean was calm that night. No signs of a fall. No one had heard a splash. Just gone. 10 days later, fishermen off the coast of Norway pulled a bloated body from the water. It had no identification. The face was unrecognizable, but the clothes, they matched what Diesel had been wearing when he boarded the ship. The body was tossed back into the sea. What happened to him? Some say he jumped, that the stress, the debts, the fear of failure was too much. His diary that night had a small X marked next to the date, something he reportedly did when he felt his life was about to take a major turn. But not everyone believes it was suicide. Diesel was on his way to a meeting with the British Navy, possibly to help them convert their fleet to diesel fuel. Germany was watching. The timing, just 1 year before World War I, was suspicious. There were rumors he had refused to sell out to the Germans, that he was planning to sell to their enemies. Some believe he was thrown overboard by agents who wanted to silence him. Others say he staged the whole thing, disappeared to start over under a new name. But Diesel didn't seem like the type. He was tired. He was stretched thin. But he was also a man who believed in finishing things. Still, no one really knows. His invention would go on to power a generation. His engine was used in submarines, in warships, in generators across the globe, and yet the man who gave the world the diesel engine disappeared into the ocean without a sound. What happened that night on the SS Dresden? Maybe it was suicide, maybe it was sabotage, or maybe the cost of changing the world is that you don't get to live in it. Number 4. Ettore Majorana. Ettore Majorana was a genius, not in the really smart kind of way, but in the terrifying, otherworldly sense. The kind of mind that made even Einstein stop and say, "This man is beyond me." Born in Sicily in 1906, Ettore was quiet, intense, awkward in crowds, and constantly lost in thought. His classmates used to say he saw equations the way artists saw color. In his early 20s, he was already working with Enrico Fermi. Yes, that Fermi, the man who would go on to build the first nuclear reactor. But even then, there was something off about Ettore. He could solve problems no one else could touch, but he often refused to publish. He once cracked a complex physics problem, handed the solution to a colleague, and walked away like it was nothing. He didn't want credit. He didn't want fame. It was as if he didn't want to be known at all. By the time he was in his early 30s, Majorana had become something of a ghost in Italy's physics circles. Brilliant, reclusive, unpredictable. His letters grew strange. His mood darkened. He started talking about the burden of knowledge, about things humanity wasn't ready for. And then, in March of 1938, he vanished. The last few days of his life were a puzzle in themselves. He withdrew a large sum of money from the bank. He sent conflicting letters, one to his family that read like a suicide note, and another that reversed it entirely. "Don't worry, I've reconsidered." Then he boarded a boat from Palermo to Naples. And just like that, gone. No one saw him disembark. No luggage, no body, no clues. Fermi was stunned. He told colleagues that Majorana didn't disappear like an ordinary man. He vanished like a cloud, dissolving into thin air. Theories exploded. Some said he jumped into the sea, that his tortured genius finally cracked under the weight of his thoughts. But others weren't so sure. One theory said he'd fled to a monastery, that he'd renounced the world and hidden away as a silent monk. That one comes from a writer named Leonardo Sciascia, who claimed the Catholic Church had secretly sheltered him. No proof, just whispers. Another theory said Majorana had defected to Argentina, or even to the Soviet Union, that his knowledge of atomic energy was too dangerous to fall into any one country's hands. And then things got really weird. In the 1950s, over a decade after his disappearance, several people claimed to have seen him. A professor in Venezuela said a man who looked exactly like Majorana had been living under a false name in Caracas. The man denied it. But when shown a photo of the missing physicist, he went pale. More sightings followed. Different countries, different stories, always the same reaction. Recognition, discomfort, denial. There's even a theory that Majorana never got on the boat at all, that he paid someone to take his place, that he staged the whole thing. Why? Maybe he feared what he knew. Maybe he wanted to stop the atomic arms race before it began. Or maybe he just wanted to disappear. Whatever happened, no one ever found his body. His family never got answers. His work, particularly his research into neutrinos and antimatter, would go on to become foundational in quantum mechanics. But the man himself, he became a legend. The Italian government officially declared him dead in 2011, 73 years after he disappeared. Think about that. A man who might have helped build the bomb walked away from history, and may have lived quietly while the rest of the world burned. What would you do if you knew how to split atoms, how to break the universe in half? Would you share it with the world? Or would you walk into the sea and let it all go? Number 3, Louis Le Prince. In the history of filmmaking, there's one name that always stands out. Edison, the Wizard of Menlo Park, the man who gave the world the light bulb, the phonograph, and, according to most textbooks, the motion picture camera. But what if I told you he wasn't first? What if I told you the true father of film vanished before he ever got to claim his title? His name was Louis Le Prince. Born in France in 1841, Le Prince was an artist and an inventor, a dreamer with a fascination for light and movement. He had a background in photography and chemistry, skills he used to try something no one else had ever managed to pull off: capturing motion on film. In the late 1880s, working quietly in a small workshop in Leeds, England, Le Prince did something astonishing. He created a single-lens motion picture camera, and it worked. The footage still exists. A short clip called Round Hay Garden Scene, filmed in 1888. 4 people walking in a garden, smiling, laughing, alive in motion. Just a few seconds long, but enough to prove it. Louis Le Prince had captured moving pictures years before Edison. He was on the verge of something huge. In 1890, he made plans to travel to America to showcase his invention. He'd already been in contact with Edison's representatives. His wife and children were in New York, waiting for him. His camera and equipment were packed. He was going to file patents, secure investors, and become a household name. And then he disappeared. On September 16th, 1890, Le Prince boarded a train in Dijon, France, heading for Paris. His brother waved him off at the station. He never arrived. The train made it to Paris, but Le Prince wasn't on it. There were no reports of him getting off early. No body was found on the tracks. No sign of violence. Nothing missing. Just gone. The last person to see him alive was his brother. And that's where the mystery begins. Some believed he committed suicide, that he felt overwhelmed or mentally unstable. But by all accounts, Le Prince was energized, excited even. He was on the brink of fame. He was days away from becoming the most important figure in cinema. Others whispered about family drama, that maybe his brother had something to do with it. Inheritance disputes, money, but no evidence ever turned up. And then there's the big theory, the one that refuses to die: Thomas Edison. After Le Prince's disappearance, Edison filed his own patent for a motion picture camera. When Le Prince's family challenged him in court, armed with Louis' footage and early designs, Edison fought hard and won. Without Le Prince to testify, there was no contest. The father of motion pictures was erased from history. Was it a coincidence? Maybe. But here's something strange. In 2003, a photo was discovered in the archives of the Paris police. It was from 1890, the same year Le Prince vanished. It showed the corpse of a man pulled from the Seine River. The face was bloated, but the features, they bore an eerie resemblance to Le Prince. There was no record of the body ever being identified. So what happened? Was Le Prince murdered before he could challenge Edison's empire? Was he thrown from the train and dumped in the river? Was he the victim of a mugging? Or did he stumble into something darker, a conspiracy to bury his invention? No one knows, and maybe no one ever will. What we do know is this: Louis Le Prince filmed the world's first motion picture, and the world forgot him. Not because he failed, not because his invention didn't work, but because he vanished, just as history was about to remember his name. Number 2, Albert Johan Petersson. Some disappearances happen in crowded cities, others in the depths of war. But this one happened on still waters, beneath a grey sky, somewhere along the quiet fjords of Norway. And to this day, no one knows why. Albert Johan Petersson wasn't a celebrity. He didn't invent a machine that changed the world. But in his field, in the world of chemistry and metallurgy, he was a star, a pioneer, a man whose discoveries could shape the steel and carbide industries for generations. He was born in Switzerland in 1863, but built his legacy in Norway, where he worked closely with the Ettore smelting company. He was brilliant, respected, and, by all accounts, obsessed with the science of heat, pressure, and transformation. But in August of 1914, something shifted. War had just erupted across Europe. Germany was invading Belgium. Alliances were forming. The world was unraveling. And Petersson, he seemed distracted. On the morning of August 18th, 1914, Petersson boarded a coastal steamer, the DS Ullensvang. It was a small passenger ship headed north, sailing from the village of Odder toward Bergen. He greeted the crew. He had a cabin. He was seen on deck. Then, by the next morning, he was gone. Just gone. The ship hadn't docked. It hadn't hit rough water. No alarms had sounded. But when the steward knocked on Petersson's cabin to deliver breakfast, there was no answer. They opened the door. The bed was made. His suitcase sat neatly by the wall. His coat hung on the hook. But he wasn't there. And he hadn't gotten off at any previous stop. There were no witnesses, no sounds in the night, no signs of distress. Just another man vanished. The crew searched the ship. They radioed ahead to Bergen. No one had seen him. The fjords that morning were calm, mirror-like. If he had gone overboard, someone should have noticed. But no one did. Investigators were called in. They questioned the passengers, interviewed the crew, checked every log and report. Nothing. No note, no illness, no debt, no enemies. Nothing to suggest he'd taken his own life, or that someone had reason to take his. And here's the strange part. Petersson wasn't just any scientist. He was one of the few people at the time working with a very specific process, producing carbide using an electric arc furnace. It was dangerous, expensive, and incredibly valuable during wartime. With the First World War just beginning, the value of such technology was skyrocketing. Steel, explosives, industrial materials, every country needed them. So the question hung heavy in the air. Was Petersson simply a victim of a freak accident? Did he slip overboard unnoticed in the still of the night? Or was it something else? Some suspected foul play. Industrial espionage wasn't unheard of in those days. Rival companies were known to sabotage each other. And governments, they had their own agendas. Others believed he fled, that the war, the pressure, the knowledge he carried, it became too much. Maybe he left everything behind and vanished into the mountains, started over with a new name, hid from a world on fire. But again, no trace, no body, no sightings, no whispers. Just one man, one morning, gone. In the end, Albert Johan Petersson became more than a missing person. He became a ghost story in the world of science. A reminder that even the quiet ones, even those who don't crave fame or fortune, can vanish without warning, without reason, without closure. Maybe the sea took him. Maybe someone else did. Or maybe he just chose to disappear. Number 1, William Cantelo. In the late 1870s, in the coastal city of Southampton, England, there was a man who worked beneath a pub. Not drank, worked. His name was William Cantelo, and he wasn't just some backroom tinkerer. He was an inventor, an engineer, a man with big ideas and no time for small talk. He set up his workshop underneath the old Tower Inn, and what he was building there would change the future of warfare. If anyone had asked what the strange noises were coming from below, the clanking, the echoing bursts of machinery, they might have guessed he was working on plumbing or maybe some kind of industrial pump. But it wasn't that. Cantelo had invented something terrifying, a machine gun. Long before Hiram Maxim would go on to invent and patent the weapon that would dominate battlefields for decades, Cantelo had already developed a prototype for a rapid-firing, recoil-powered gun. His sons helped him test it. The report said it could fire faster and farther than anything seen at the time. And then, just as he began looking for buyers, he disappeared. One day, in the early 1880s, Cantelo withdrew a large sum of money from the bank, packed up some equipment, left without a word, and never came back. His family waited days, then weeks, then months. They hired private detectives. They searched ports and rail stations. Nothing. His workshop was abandoned. The prototype gun was missing. It was like he'd been erased. Years passed. Then one day, his sons were flipping through a newspaper and stopped cold. There, staring back at them from the page, was a photograph. The man in the image had a thick beard, a serious look. He was listed as a successful inventor, now living in America. His name, Hiram Maxim. The resemblance was uncanny. Same eyes, same building, same nose. The family was stunned. They were convinced it was him. William Cantelo had changed his name and reinvented himself across the Atlantic. They wrote letters, begged for answers. Finally, they scraped together enough money to send one of the sons to New York to confront this Maxim. And that's where things got even weirder. When they met him in person, the resemblance was still there. Too close to be coincidence, they thought. The son asked, point blank, "Are you William Cantelo?" Maxim laughed, denied it, insisted he'd always been Hiram Maxim, that he was born in Maine, that he had no idea who they were. He even provided documentation. And yet, the way he spoke, the way he moved, it haunted them. Here was a man with the exact same invention, the exact same ideas, the same unique mechanism, the same timing, but no connection, really. To this day, no one can say for certain whether Maxim was Cantelo. The official story is no, Hiram Maxim was a real person, with family, birth records, and a documented past. Historians have traced his lineage, his inventions, but the Cantelo family never believed it. They believed their father had faked his own death, changed his identity, and sold his invention under a new name to escape something. Maybe debt, maybe failure, or maybe something darker. There's a rumor, a small one, never confirmed, that Cantelo had grown paranoid, that he feared his invention would fall into the wrong hands, that governments had approached him, that he was being watched. It sounds far-fetched, until you remember that the Maxim gun would go on to become one of the most widely used killing machines in human history. It changed warfare forever, and its true origin still debated. William Cantelo stepped into history's shadow, and someone else came out the other side. So the question remains, did William Cantelo disappear, or did he simply rebrand? 5 men, 5 minds ahead of their time, each one balancing on the edge of discovery. And then just like that, gone. No car crash, no long illness, no goodbye, just silence. Maybe that's the cost of being a visionary. When you see too far ahead, when you know too much, or create too quickly, maybe the world pushes back. Rudolf Diesel, Swallowed by the Sea. before he could change the face of naval power. Ettore Majorana, brilliant enough to predict atomic destruction, and possibly wise enough to run from it. Louis le Prince, robbed of recognition, erased before cinema could crown him its father. Albert Petersson, vanishing into the fog as a world war ignited around him. And William Cantelo, who may have walked away from his name and into history under someone else's. Some of these men left clues, others left nothing, but all of them left questions. And maybe that's the most haunting part. It's not just where they went, it's what the world lost when they disappeared. A better fuel, a better understanding of the universe, a different origin for the movies we love, safer technology, an end to war, or a new beginning. We'll never know, because these men didn't just vanish, they took the future with them. What do you think happened? Were these disappearances just tragic coincidences, or were they erased intentionally by people who stood to gain from their absence? Drop your theory in the comments, and if you love stories like this, unsolved, strange, just a little bit haunting, subscribe for more, because we've barely scratched the surface. Next time, we'll talk about the scientist who may have discovered a way to photograph the soul, and then burned all his notes before anyone else could see them. Until then, stay curious.